So it's easiest to do in the front view. And we just want to grab, so I'm in, vertex mode here. I want to select all the vertices right down the middle, but not any of these ones that are not exactly in the middle, so I want to control select them to deselect them. So I'm holding down the control key to do that. Make sure none of these extra ones are selected if they're not right in the midline. Even here. So if you do, you're going to run into some problems if you fail to deselect some of these things. So let's look around. Now these two, actually I want to select. So if I go into one mode, it's probably easier to do in one mode than smooth mode. Okay, I think that's got them all. So now we have to execute a command called merge. So under edit mesh, merge. Just leave it at the default settings. And it merged them all except, and I can tell that it merged them because it had a thicker line here. Because remember earlier on we turned on border edges. And when they were separate there was a border edge here. Oops. But when I merge them, the border edge disappeared, except in these areas down here. And that's because the threshold for merging them was not set correctly. So what that means is if we had it set, if I just click here in the channel box to this input called polymerge vert1, there's a distance threshold. And if they were less than 0.01 units away from each other, they'll merge together. So the ones that were exactly overlapping automatically merged. The ones that are slightly more than that distance away from each other failed to merge. So we just have to turn up that amount here. So distance, I'm just selecting the word, and then in the interface I'm going to middle mouse click and drag until they all pop together. Now there's a problem here. When I do that, it causes these ones that are also that close together to pop together. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm just going to do a different poly merge on these ones that are still unmerged. So if I just go in and find the ones that are still unmerged, and that little trick didn't work. Oh, there's still these two here that have to merge as well, but I'll do them separately just to avoid problems. So I'm going to go to edit mesh, merge. Again, just turn it up. Not too much, or otherwise you get that sort of weird. So just enough so those ones pop together. And then finally we've got one more down here. One more pair, these two. So I'm just going to hit G to do the same command. And they merge together nicely. So there you go. You've got a fully resolved head. And I'm going to delete its history. And what I would do now is just go in and make sure everything is good. So if, for example, I look here in the side view and I've got this kind of robotic crease in the head, so I may just try and loosen these up. Now by selecting this way, I'm selecting both sides. So I know I'm fixing it up on both sides. So I'm just going to go in and sort of even this out a little bit to avoid that unnatural forehead corner. So just go in and tweak and make sure everything is good. You can see that I've lost a little bit of the shape here. So it's at this stage that you just do your final fixes. Now one area that I think I do have to fix is the nose, because the nose isn't going to, it looks so symmetrically perfect that it looks kind of bizarre. So I'm just going to look here. I drew it largely that way, but I may want to actually look at the cranium at this point and maybe tweak some of these things to add a little. You can see it's sunken in here a little bit more. I may want to pull these points in a tiny bit more. See, it's sort of, it looks a little rounder on this side. But this is kind of stuff I'd like to try and capture here. I think I may change the nose tip, shape of the nose tip a little just by, grabbing these points. I can use the scale tool if I have two of them selected just to pull them in a little bit. Just because it looks a little broader than I had planned on when I was just modeling it from one side. And that happens when you're just modeling from one side. Sometimes it's a little difficult to assess what it's going to look like um, when both sides are put together. I may even just drag these points down a bit. I want to make sure I don't have stuff in the back selected. Nope, that looks weird. That kind of stuff. You can see I've gone in too far here, so I'm going to go in and fix this stuff up a little bit so none of that is showing through, but you can see it's not perfectly symmetrical anymore. It's a little hard to read with this kind of stuff in the background. But just do what you can to try and get the feeling of the different sides of the face where it seems appropriate. Now there, you can see the orbits are slightly differently shaped, so I may want to, start moving some of these around. Whoops, a little bit to sort of match the individual shape of the orbit. You can see that this orbit is much flatter this way, so I can maybe pull some of these points in a little bit. Again, you're just trying to capture the individuality here. If I want to look at the other side of the skull here, I can click. Oops. Sometimes this doesn't work. It usually means your camera is in too close. If you can't flip in one of these views, so you can show your cameras here in your... the camera's not in that close at all. If I just pull it, will that work? And then go over to the other side. Oops, I'm going to hide my cameras in this view. Just want to make sure everything is working in both views. Pull some of this stuff to follow what this skull is telling us a little bit, the shape of the bones underneath. Also, you turn your tissue depth markers on. Anyway, it's just a matter of observation, and you don't want the skin to hug the bone, obviously, but the orientation of the bone surface is going to help at least try and figure out, whoops, don't do that, what's going on here. So that's pretty good. So there you have it. Turn off those tissue depth markers. So it's up to you to figure these things out. Again, I'm not really happy with the way this is going in here. I'd tweak this a little more in my actual model to get rid of some of that. But again, I have to do what the bone tells me in the tissue depth markers to accommodate them. So remember that people have funny faces. You can't expect them to look perfect, and you don't really want that. Now, one other thing I should mention, excuse me, I don't really see it here in my model too much, but you may have some creases along the midline. So for example, if I have a vertex, a couple of vertices, like that. Oh, it's not really showing up. But if you do have creases here in the midline, you may just want to grab those vertices and, yikes, and just make sure you may have to push them back or pull them forward a little bit. I made this little nose a little too crooked. Oh, and one other thing that we could do here is introduce a bit of a philtrum. That's one thing I forgot. So you do it in a couple of ways, and I think probably the easiest is to just extrude one here. So if we just select these faces here, and probably not these faces here, but if I go to edit mesh extrude, then I can just scale them in, push them back a little bit, and then we can just introduce that structure. And then if we want to sort of have it merge into the division here between the nose, then we can just grab it. This looks so wide to me. I'm going to scale this in a little bit. Let's move some of this up. Yeah, so again, just endlessly tweaking to get the shape that we want it. If we want to exaggerate it down here near the lip, then we can just push this point in. Anyway, again, look at references to see how far you should be going, what the shape should actually be like. Like I say, sometimes I tend to overdo. That looks a little sharp to me. Probably don't want it to be so exaggerated. Maybe just pull these points out just to relax that edge a little bit. Just a little bit. Anyway. So you're saving as you go along, and then you can delete the history when you've done everything you think you need to do. And the last thing we can do is to smooth out the model. Now, you know when we go into 2 mode or 3 mode, we see the smooth representation of it. But if I were to render this out, if I just do a quick render, it renders in the low res mode. That's just an on-screen representation. What we need to do is add a smooth to this. Oh, and you see when I combined it, I lost the name of it, so I'm going to change it back to head. So to smooth, you just go to mesh, smooth, open the option box, and just change, it should look like this, just change the division levels to 2, and say smooth, and there we've got our finished head. Now in the last tutorial, I'm just going to show you how to add a couple of lights to the scene and a camera and just render it out, and then you're done. See? Easy.